Hello there, my name is Luke, and I'm coming to you from my closet. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about video game storytelling, from its start in the early 70s to one of my favorite examples of modern day storytelling that I feel shows just how far we've come in these past 5 decades. To start, let me give you a little history of video games as a whole. Back when Grandma was still a kid, William Higginbot created a little game called Tennis for Two on an oscilloscope in the year 1958. Each player would control a paddle, which would bounce a pixel back and forth between the two, with the overall goal being to get the ball past your opponent. And this was one of the first, if not the first, video game ever created. Apparently, after seeing whatever the hell that thing was, the people at Magnavox thought, hey, let's make some more of that shit. And almost 15 years later, the Magnavox Odyssey would be released in September of 1972.
This is Odyssey, the new electronic game simulator. You attach Odyssey to your television set in seconds to create a closed-circuit electronic playground. Odyssey is tennis, roulette, football, and hockey.
Now, I'm a proud American, so I don't know much about hockey, but this is hockey. The console's design was quite simple. Each game utilized the same gameplay of just moving your paddle up and down on the screen while pixel bounced between you and your opponent. The only variation came from the overlays that would be placed on your television screen. Then, 2 months later, Atari apparently couldn't handle not having their own version of that too. So that November, Pong was introduced in arcades around North America. Speaking of Atari, their 2600 console could arguably be seen as where games with an actual story began. Atari released 2 video games in 1982 that are often cited as major contributors to the video game crash of 1983. Upon the release of the film E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Atari released E.T. the Extraterrestrial, the video game, for the Atari 2600, and in that same year they released Pac-Man, a port of the arcade game, to their console. Gaming didn't return to the forefront of our collective consciousness until 1985 with the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System. This is where we got some of the greatest video games of all time, from Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt, to The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Bros. 3, and many more titles. This is where gaming really began to take off. In recent years, as arcades have begun shutting down, games have shifted more towards being cinematic experiences, more so than just trying to take your coins. Alongside this shift in content, we've also seen a shift in demographics that games attract. One of the main series that I want to talk about in this video is The Last of Us by Naughty Dog, which is one of the biggest video game series of the past decade. To start, let me fill you in on what The Last of Us is. The Last of Us is an action-adventure and survival horror series first released on the PlayStation 3 in 2014, developed by Naughty Dog and written by Neil Druckmann. The game was met with both critical and widespread success for its in-depth character development and story. Also considered one of the most significant games of the 7th generation of video games. The game became well known for its complex cast of characters, who, although they may make questionable choices throughout the story, do so because it needs to be done to survive. Arguably the game's most famous scene is the intro cutscene. Joel is a single father working hard to provide for his kid, and we first meet him on his birthday. In the cutscene, his daughter, Sarah, gives him the watch that she had fixed for him.
Honey, please not right now. I do not have the energy for this.
Here,
What's this?
your birthday? You kept complaining about your broken watch. So I figured, You like it?
Honey, it's
What?
nice, but I think it's stuck. It's not.
What? No. Oh, ha ha.
In the first minute of the game, we learn everything we need to know about Joel. He's a hardworking and extremely loving father who just wants the best for his kid. The low-key nature of the game is broken up when Sarah gets a phone call from Joel's brother, Tommy. We can hear things are bad, and through the gameplay that follows, we begin to realize what's happening. If you choose to explore the house a little bit, rather than heading straight to Joel's room, you can find a newspaper in the bathroom mentioning a 300% increase in enrollment in the local hospital due to some form of infection. So just to recap, through 1 minute with Joel, we learn exactly what his character is.
Daddy?
Explosions from within the city rock their suburban home. Cop cars are flying towards the source, and Joel is nowhere to be found.
8 missed calls. Where the hell are you? Call me on my way.
He comes in through the back door, loading up his revolver. Their next door neighbor breaks through, resembling a zombie, and Joel stands his ground, shooting him.
Jimmy, I am warning you!
You shot him.
Sarah,
I saw him this morning.
listen to me. There is something bad going on. And we have got to get out of here. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
Even though his young daughter was there, he did what he had to do to protect her without any hesitation. We then see his brother Tommy pick them up and bring them into town, where there's pandemonium in the streets, and they get into a car accident. The first time we control Joel, he's carrying his daughter in his arms, her leg seemingly broken from the accident. Even though she's afraid, he continues to console her, telling her she'll be okay and keeping her calm. This shows exactly who Joel is as a man. As I stated before, he does what he needs to do to protect the ones he loves, like when we saw him shoot Jimmy, his neighbor. The entire first 15 minutes of the game feature absolutely no combat, which is one of the main parts of the game. The only gameplay that we have is in the house looking for Joel and running through the town with Tommy. We then get one of the most heartbreaking moments in video game history, when a soldier is ordered to fire upon Joel and Sarah, which results in Sarah's death in her father's arms.
Hey, we need help.
Stop!
Please. It's my daughter. I think her leg is broken.
Stop right there!
Okay. We're not sick.
Got a couple of civilians on the outer perimeter. Please advise.
Daddy, what about Uncle Tommy?
We're gonna get you to safety and go back for him, okay?
Sir, there's a little girl. But... Yes, sir.
Somebody, we've just been through hell. Okay, we just need... Shit. Please don't. Oh, no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me. I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. All right, I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. Come on. No. No. No, no, please. Please, please don't. Please.
At this exact moment, we're introduced to the game's soundtrack as well, which plays just loud enough to be heard in the background and accompanies the scene perfectly. This then transitions into the game's title and intro cinematic. Normally, an intro cutscene like this would typically be reserved for the start of the game, as soon as the player begins, to introduce them to the story they will be getting. But there's recently been a transition to having gameplay lead us into the title sequence in order to introduce us to the game's story, characters, and themes rather than just attempting to tell us what they are. It's a very subtle thing, but I feel it's more effective than it may seem in hooking the player into what they're about to be experiencing. Through those first 15 minutes, you know that this isn't going to be your typical shooter game like Gears of War or Call of Duty. You know you're going to be in for quite the ride. When talking about this intro cutscene on the first episode of the Last of Us podcast, the game's writer Neil Druckmann stated,
So initially, the opening was you played as Joel, and you would go over your neighbor's house, and see your neighbor get infected and have to do your first kill there as Joel, then come back to your house and get Sarah and be on your way. And but the more we thought about it, it's like, one, it felt like, okay, I've kind of seen that before, you know. So I was like, how do we make this interesting? And then in one of our brainstorms got the idea like, well, what if you saw everything through Sarah's eyes? And that became exciting because you're playing a much more innocent, not as capable person. So you feel the fear of the world kind of falling apart around you,
What is going on?
and you feel more helpless. We have very limited time with Sarah, and we need to establish this character and create all this empathy, because she is the reason why Joel ends up the way he is when we're jumping into the future. And it was a nice foreshadowing of where the story is ultimately going when you play as Ellie. Kind of like you're playing these two daughters that this guy ends up having.
And yes, I did just spend 7-ish minutes of this video talking about just the game's fucking intro. So if that isn't a testament to this game's storytelling, I don't know what is. Just look at how much information we're able to learn in almost no time at all, literally before the opening credits of the game start. You go into the intro not knowing what to expect, but in a very cinematic yet mysterious fashion, we're introduced to two main characters as well as the universe in which the game takes place in a near perfect manner. An experience like this is completely different than what you'd find in the arcade back in the 80s and 90s, where those were typically a couple minutes long and were just meant as cash grabs. Although this video may seem a bit haphazard, I just think it's incredible how far we've truly come in all of these years. We've gone from a pixel bouncing back and forth on an oscilloscope to complex narratives with overarching moral themes and characters that you can truly attach yourself to, even in such a short amount of time. It's honestly just breathtaking to me that we're able to come this far. These cinematic AAA games like The Last of Us and Uncharted are far cries from the arcade games which preceded them. They just serve to show how versatile video games are as a genre, maybe even more so than something like a movie or a television show. You're able to build empathy just through playing as these characters, which you don't experience in any other medium. Playing as Sarah in that first 15 minutes of The Last of Us is like nothing else. You're able to bond with this character that you've never met before, so you actually care when she dies in the end of the scene. Like Neil Druckmann said, that's the only way they could have started the game. It's been done before where you follow the hero, but getting to learn that empathy with that one character is just something that I feel like no other game has done as well as The Last of Us did. It just goes to show how complex the stories that are put into video games can be, and they should be appreciated just as much as movies. Thank you so much for watching my video. I've never really made anything like this before, so hopefully it was entertaining and informative. I hope to make more like this in the future, but I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.